This is a dark romance. It's a very interesting story about censorship. I am a fan of his writing. She's not a serial killer. She's a multiple deleter. Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Vidi. For those of you who are new here, it is the start of a new month. It is time to review and wrap up the books that I read for March. No further explanation needed. Let's jump straight into the statistics. So this month I read a total of 9 books, 2 dystopian / classics, 1 fantasy, 1 paranormal / fantasy, 3 dark romances, and 2 romance books. In total, I read 3,205 pages. So starting off with the first book, I actually read the first book on my Kindle, and that is Once Your Mind by Morgan Bridges. This is a dark romance, like dark. I know there's been a lot of like dark rom-coms coming out lately and I'm really enjoying that genre, but this is not lighthearted at all, by the way. So definitely check the triggers. This story follows Callista, who has just lost her father. Basically her life, her financial stability, everything kind of went away once her father passed away. And she's just doing the best that she can with her life, with her current situation, and trying to figure out who her father's murderer was. Enter Hayden, who actually is the person that murdered Callista's father, starts getting this obsession over Callista after he kind of finds out that maybe she's not what he thinks she was supposed to be. So it's a romance between Callista and Hayden. I'm unsure how to feel about the book. I, in theory, liked it. I liked parts of it, but there are other parts where I'm just kind of like uncomfortable, and that is probably due to like triggers and stuff like that. I'm still kind of not very much convinced that I enjoyed the book, but I also didn't hate it, and there are parts that I did like. So I don't know if that made sense. I am kind of curious about the second book. Not curious enough to actually continue the series, but still kind of curious. This is not a standalone. It does continue on, and I think that's the whole part of all of this, that I'm just kind of like, I'm not sure if I like that. Considering that I haven't really thought about continuing the series now, I feel like it didn't really leave much of an impression. So overall, for the parts that I like, I did give it a 3 out of 5. And as for Spice, I also gave it a 3 out of 5. By the way, my Spice ratings, not reliable at all. Anything that is a 1 is a fade to black, closed door kind of situation. Anything that's a 2, it's the usual typical romance that like normally there's some kind of spice here and there, but nothing too overwhelming. Anything more than that is not really reliable. I know that sometimes my spice doesn't like make sense, but just know that the 1 and the 2, that's what I'm thinking about. Anything higher than that, it's kind of like sometimes it is spicier than what I rate, sometimes it's not. The book that I picked up after was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is a classic / dystopian novel. This one is a lot bigger than what you normally see because it does have essays and like explanations and stuff like that, which is like half of the book. But the overall story by Ray Bradbury follows the story of our main character, Guy Montag, who is a firefighter. However, in this world, a firefighter is not someone that prevents fires. It's actually someone that starts fires. So he is part of the fire department. One day, Guy is coming back from work and meets his neighbor, a 17-year-old girl named Claire, who is this kind of odd child, right? She does not act like other teenagers and stuff like that. She's just kind of free-spirited and sees the world through like a whole different lens, and starts opening Guy's eyes to what the world around him is, because the whole point of this world is that no one stops to just take a moment to breathe and live. Everything is just so fast-paced, does not give you a chance to kind of think, critically analyze anything because of how fast-paced it is, and Claire does that. She just takes a second to live in the moment. I don't even know how many times I've read this book. The first time I ever read it was in high school, and I love this story. This has, I think, 3 chapters, and y'all know how I feel about long chapters. So I struggle having to kind of like find places to stop where it felt okay to stop. But other than that, it is a dystopian world. It like sucked me right in. Just the idea of like history being rewritten. It's a very interesting story about censorship and stuff like that. I feel like this book is a reminder to us all to just slow down and look at the world we live in. I don't know, it feels like a life lesson for sure. Really enjoyed this book. A little bit dark. There's a lot of scary parallels that I'm like noticing in these banned books. If you have not read Fahrenheit 451, I would 10 out of 10 recommend. Overall, I rated this book a 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, really enjoyed myself. So the book I picked up after that was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I needed something light and I needed something fluffy. I have been reading a lot of dark dystopian stories lately, and it's hard not to like bring yourself down when you read stuff like that, so I needed something to cheer me up. This book is for the online book club that I am in, and this is a rom-com. The story follows Lucy, who is a mother to a preteen. Her preteen decides she needs to intervene in her mother's love life because her daughter feels like Lucy is lonely. Her daughter decides to call a radio show called Heartstrings in the middle of the night. Lucy finds out, gets on the phone with the host of the radio show, Aiden, eventually starts telling her own secrets and stuff like that, and decides to just kind of play along. What she never expected was that this show would go viral and suddenly kind of change her life. Now they're asking Lucy to be in Heartstrings and kind of help her find the love of her life. This story does follow a romance between Lucy and Aiden. It's supposed to be kind of like a grumpy sunshine because Lucy believes in love, believes in magic and stuff like that, and Aiden has been working so long in this job and has heard so many different stories that has made him lose hope in love. He's a bit more of a cynic. I really enjoyed this story. I really liked Lucy. I kind of cried at the end, and I think I was just very overwhelmed and stuff like that. I don't know, it just felt very sweet and loving and touching. I feel like Aiden could have done a little bit more groveling, if I'm being honest. I feel like Lucy was definitely very mature and I mean Aiden was too, but Lucy definitely was the mature one in the situation overall. So like I said, this was a nice little rom-com, very much inspired by Sleepless in Seattle, and it feels like that. I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5. And as for spice, I will say 2 out of 5. I would definitely recommend this book if you want something light, rom-com kind of ish. So after that, even though I was just complaining about reading too many dark books, I picked up A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is another dystopian slash classic. So this story takes place in an authoritarian regime where people are genetically bred and socially indoctrinated since before they were born to take away any freedoms and individuality. This story does follow multiple people, so it doesn't just follow one main character, to show kind of different personalities within this authoritarian regime. So it is honestly a very dark and like depressing story. I found this one really sad and a little bit hard to read towards the end, just because of like the lack of humanity essentially. It was very interesting, a very interesting take. I feel like this is definitely a reflection of full government control from like conception to death. Very interesting book, A Brave New World. Never read it before, but I somewhat enjoyed it if I don't think too much about the dark bits of it. I'm going to give the story a 4 out of 5. And I think I forgot to mention, but this is also part of the banned book list. So the book I picked up after that was again on my Kindle, and this book was for the in-person book club that I'm in, and that is City of Thorns by C.N. Crawford. So City of Thorns is a paranormal, I would say fantasy, but it's not necessarily fantasy. I know that it could get categorized as fantasy though, but it's a paranormal romance. It follows our main character, Rowan, who is a mortal girl living in the human part of the world, which is like literally our world, and then there's the demon world. So there's portals to go into this demon world. So Rowan is trying to get her degree when she kind of just suddenly finds herself in a, dungeon, because she looks like this infamous succubus who our main male lead completely hates and is trying to get revenge for what this succubus did to him. So overall, I feel like the idea and the plot was interesting. It is definitely something that I usually gravitate to, especially the whole paranormal aspect of it all. I really enjoy a paranormal story. However, this was more of an urban paranormal story when I feel like it was trying to get promoted as a gothic paranormal story. So I definitely feel like there was some kind of weird disconnect for the setting. With the feedback that some of my friends gave in the book club though, I heard heard that the audiobook was a lot more enjoyable, and I will say that I listened to the dramatized version towards the end because I kind of had to push myself to finish the story, and I feel like listening to it compared to reading it, definitely more enjoyable. And I think that's primarily because the writing style was definitely not my style. That's not something I usually gravitate to. But overall, the idea kind of captured me. I feel like the ending was significant enough for you to want to continue to read the series. So I'm going to rate this a 2.5 out of 5, and as for Spice, I'm going to say a 2 out of 5. Like I said, I would recommend if you're into that kind of genre. My camera's overheating, so we're gonna take a quick pause and then continue. The next book that I picked up was The Hobbit by Tolkien. Oh my god, that feels weird. J.R.R. Tolkien. This story is a fantasy story. It's, I guess you could say, like a prequel, right? That's the word. It's an introduction to Middle-earth. So The Hobbit follows our main character Bilbo, who is a hobbit living in his hobbit hole and is very just content and happy with his life until one day Gandalf the wizard comes knocking at his door, basically signing him up for an adventure with 13 other dwarves. And Bilbo wanted nothing to do with it, but he was still kind of dragged into this adventure. So it just then follows Bilbo and all of his quests, his small side quests that he gets into. I was really intimidated to pick up these books. I don't know why, but I really was. And this story, the writing, absolutely beautiful. I knew I was going to like the story, but I did not know how much I was going to enjoy the writing. The structure of it was a narration, a very much like storytelling kind of feel where you sit down and someone's telling you a story. I really enjoyed that. I liked it. There were some parts where I'm like, let me listen to this on audiobook, and it just felt like someone was just telling me a story about this person having a grand adventure. And the voices as well, I would definitely recommend listening to it in audiobook if you would like to get into the series. I also would recommend reading it because the writing is just gorgeous. I do want to continue reading more of Tolkien's work. I am a fan of his writing and it's very inspiring. I really enjoyed it. Overall, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5. Good book. Good book. It was a sweet fantasy with some more serious parts, but it was still just a very comforting book. So after that, I picked up another story on my Kindle. This one's called Arran's Obsession. It is a dark romance, and boy oh boy is this one smutty. So I actually had seen this one being promoted on Instagram, and there was this reel that caught my attention. Basically, the premise was 5 women sign up for a game where 20 men are chasing them down, and if they catch you, they claim you and you're theirs. Right? Okay, we know what kind of story we're getting into, right? So this story follows our main character, Genevieve, whose father has gone missing. She's getting evicted, and suddenly her friend turns up dead. The only person that might have the answers to all of this is this guy named Arran, who runs a club and has a monthly game, the game I just described to you, and Genevieve accidentally finds herself in this game. This is one of my feedbacks, is that the game was the main premise of what captured your audience, right? To get to read your book. It didn't really last that long. I thought that was going to be kind of like the whole purpose of the book, but it wasn't. That was just more of a bit of a hook. It is a dark romance. I feel like it's definitely more lusty. It's not necessarily like a build-up romance with a lot of chemistry. It relies a lot on the spice. It's a very smutty book. It heavily relies on the spice to push the plot. There is a slight plot because there's still that whole mystery going on, but that's not the main point of the story, in my opinion. Another feedback is that the main character is blonde. Especially for these kind of books, I'm not usually attracted to the blonde trait. So in my head, he was a light chestnut colored hair guy. But other than that, spicy book. Check trigger warnings. There is a lot of triggers in this book that I would definitely recommend to check the trigger list. Be warned that I said smutty and spicy many times in this review for a reason. So overall, I'm going to rate this book a 3 out of 5. As for spice, I want to say a 4.5. 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, let's say that. Spicy, spicy, spicy book. So the book I picked up after that was You Between the the Lines by Katie Naiman. This is a cute little rom-com. This story follows Lee, who is sick and tired of corporate life, as a lot of us are, and decides to go back to school to get her MFA. She is a poet and she wants to focus on her writing, and she feels going back to school will allow her to focus on her writing. Lee does tend to have a lot of people-pleasing tendencies, and her best friend and her therapist both told her to focus on her writing and not compare herself too much to others, not worry too much about what other people think. However, Lee still struggles with that, especially when her high school rival shows up, Will, who is another poet in her MFA program. Between Will and this new fellowship that got announced, Lee is just having a hard time trying not to lose herself, but she still can't help feel like she's not good enough to be a poet. That's kind of the gist of the story. It's messy. I feel like deals a lot with mental health, and I have a love-hate relationship with this book because I really liked it, but there were times where I just hated it. Not because of the story, but rather like me projecting my own insecurities onto the main character because I related a lot to her. Way too much, and it made me feel exposed and vulnerable. It deals with the topic of imposter syndrome, anxiety, so it does deal a lot with mental health and stuff like that. I really enjoyed the story and the growth, and you could see the train of thought that Lee has, and I understand how that can be very obnoxious being in someone's head. But like I said, I really related to her, and I know this story is not for everyone. I will say that now that Lee is not a reliable narrator and not very likable. I do think that it was an overall good story. I'm not 100% sold on the ending. I feel like it's a happily ever after ending, but I feel like it's happy for now kind of ending. So overall, I'm going to give this book a 4 out of 5. As for spice, I'm going to say a 2 out of 5. I did enjoy the writing. I did enjoy how much I could relate to it. I am not sold on Will, and I am not sold on the ending, but I think overall it's a good story. Finally, the last book I picked up from March was Leather and Lark by Bryn Weaver. This is the second book to the Ruinous Love trilogy. It is a dark rom-com, so we do have that lightness to it with a more comedic relief. So this story follows Lark, who has a very limited group of people she actually cares about, and one day those people are threatened, so Lark comes up with a plan to keep the people she cares about safe and marries Lachlan, our male main character, and someone she cannot stand. So this is supposed to be kind of an enemies to lovers story, which actually has a foundation as to why they hate each other and makes sense. I definitely like this book a lot more than the first book. Lark, she is my favorite. I really like her. She's so badass, and I like how she kind of is so girly about how badass she is at the same time. She's a girly pop with a killer streak. She's not a serial killer. She's a multiple deleter. I just really liked her. And Lachlan is our broody male main character who realized that he was in the wrong, not only apologized, but let his actions speak. Which, come on. We like that, don't we? So I feel like the pairing was really good. It is a marriage of convenience slash fake marriage trope with like obviously the enemies to lovers that I mentioned earlier. Because of like the forced proximity, they do have to bond, and I don't know, I was talking about this with my book club, and I really do enjoy the fake marriage or fake dating because it kind of forces them to develop a friendship and forces them to develop their relationship. So when it's done right, you get a good book out of it. This book also felt spicier than the first book. I would 10 out of 10 recommend the audiobook. I listened to parts of it, not all of it, but it was a good book. They also have a song, since Lark is a singer. A song was made specifically for this book called Ruinous Love. Would listen to it if I were you as well. I really enjoyed the story, and just overall good feel, good couple. Can see them go on strong. So I'm going to give the story a 4.5 out of 5. And as for spice, a 3 out of 5. Good book, recommend the series. So those are all the books I read for March. A total of 9 books. 6 of them here are physical and 3 of them were on my Kindle. I had a lot of fun this month with my reads. It was a variety. I was really into dark romance, as you could tell, and I just really enjoyed myself. But anyway, if you read any of these books or have any book recommendations or just want to talk about books, go ahead and leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already and you would like to, please subscribe. I usually make book content with a little bit of slice of life here and there. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.